She stayed quiet when they followed her. She stayed calm when they stopped her, but the moment they humiliated her in front of the entire school, that was the moment her father came home. And this time, he wasn't wearing a uniform. It happened in the middle of a crowded hallway at Lakeside High just after the lunch bell rang. Maya Thompson, a quiet 17-year-old senior with early acceptance to Stanford, was walking with her head down, clutching her binder the way she always did, focused, composed. But that Wednesday, Officer Troy Beckett decided to make an example out of her, and the hallway erupted into cruel laughter. What no one knew was that the man who'd raised her wasn't just any father. He was Colonel Ethan Thompson, a retired Delta Force commander with a reputation that echoed across continents. And the humiliation they thought would silence her, it was the spark that set everything in motion. Maya Thompson was the kind of student every teacher hoped for, quiet, focused, and destined for greatness. At just 17, she was already accepted early to Stanford, carrying herself with a calm confidence that came not from arrogance, but from years of discipline and self-reliance. She kept her head down, not out of fear, but because she knew what she wanted in life and didn't see the point in distractions. Lakeside High, nestled in a suburban corner of Colorado, was supposed to be a safe place for students like her. Students who did everything right. But it wasn't. The school had recently partnered with the local police department to bolster its security presence, a decision that quickly turned into a problem for students of color. Officer Troy Beckett, 44, was the assigned school resource officer, and though his badge read, "To protect and serve," his behavior told a different story. With a permanently condescending tone and a habit of asserting control in the most unnecessary ways, he had become a quiet source of fear in the halls of Lakeside. His authority was rarely questioned, and his power often unchecked, especially because his son, Jake Beckett, was also a senior at the school. Jake was everything Maya wasn't: loud, entitled, and used to being the smartest voice in the room until Maya started proving otherwise. The real tension began 2 months earlier during a heated debate in AP US history. The topic was systemic inequality, and Maya, with data, case studies, and poised delivery, dismantled Jake's vague, dismissive arguments point by point. The class clapped. Jake clenched his jaw. From that moment, Maya moved to the top of the class rankings, pushing Jake to second place. For someone like him, whose identity was wrapped up in dominance and being seen as exceptional, the blow was personal. But it wasn't just about school pride or class debates. Jake resented Maya for being smarter, more respected, and unbothered by his attempts to intimidate her. And Officer Beckett, he didn't see Maya as just another student. He saw her through the lens Jake gave him: a disrespectful girl who talked back, a problem to be handled. Slowly, deliberately, Beckett began inserting himself into Maya's routine. He'd stand too close by her locker. He'd ask pointed questions in the parking lot. He'd appear at school events and just watch, arms folded, eyes locked. It was subtle, calculated, and suffocating. Maya told her mum about it once but brushed it off. She was used to holding things in, believing that silence and perseverance would carry her through. What she didn't know was that the situation was building, that behind the tension was a deeper motive, that in a school where perception often outweighed truth, one father's bitterness had turned into another man's abuse of power, and all of it was about to reach a boiling point. Because when silence is ignored and integrity is threatened, the consequences don't just echo, they explode. It happened during lunch break on a Thursday. Just another ordinary day until it wasn't. Maya was walking down the main hallway at Lakeside High, her binder hugged tight against her chest, earbuds in but with the volume low, just enough to stay focused. She wasn't expecting trouble. She never did. But trouble had been stalking her in plain sight for weeks, wearing a badge and a smirk. Officer Troy Beckett had a habit of showing up wherever Maya was: near the parking lot after school, by the vending machines in the science wing, standing just a little too close to her locker. At first, it felt like a coincidence. Then it started to feel like surveillance. That day, as she passed the entrance near the cafeteria, Beckett was already there, leaning casually against the wall with a bottle of water in his hand and a small group of students lingering nearby. He waited until she was just close enough. Then, as if it were nothing, he stepped forward, bumped her shoulder with his, and tilted the bottle so that the cold water splashed directly down the front of her shirt. A collective gasp swept through the hallway, followed by laughter, sharp, loud, unforgiving. Maya froze, the water soaking into her blouse, her hands trembling as her binder slipped to the floor. Papers scattered across the tile. She looked up, stunned, but Beckett just smiled and said loud enough for everyone to hear, "Guess someone forgot how to walk like a lady." The words stung more than the cold. No one stepped in. No teacher emerged from the classroom. The hallway swallowed the moment like it was entertainment. Maya didn't speak. She didn't retaliate. She knelt slowly, gathered her soaked notes, and stood back up without making eye contact. But in that quiet, deliberate movement, something shifted, not just in the air around her, but deep inside. There was no yelling, no tears, no dramatic outburst. Just silence. Heavy, loaded silence. The kind that doesn't go away. As she turned to leave, still dripping, her shoes squeaking against the tile, her face betrayed what her voice would not. Not just humiliation, but disbelief. And fear. Not the kind that makes you hide, but the kind that makes you think. That makes you see everything differently. That makes you realize you're not just being harassed, you're being targeted. That you're not just a student anymore, you're a threat to someone who can't handle your strength. In the echo of laughter behind her, Maya felt her world narrow into something sharp and cold. But what no one saw, what even she didn't fully understand yet, was that her silence wasn't surrender. It was the beginning of something else entirely. A quiet kind of awakening. The kind that doesn't erupt in the moment, but waits, builds, prepares. Because when your dignity is stripped from you in front of an audience, you don't just walk away. You carry it with you, and one day you put it back in front of the world with proof. Maya didn't tell anyone right away. She walked through the rest of the day in silence, changed into a spare shirt in the nurse's office, skipped lunch, and retreated to the back corner of the library. Her hands shook when she tried to take notes, and her eyes darted to every shadow that moved outside the glass windows. But someone had seen what happened. Mr. Daniels, her US government teacher, a man in his early 30s who took his job seriously and his students even more so, had witnessed the moment in the hallway. He waited until after class, standing by the door, his voice calm but firm as he said, "Maya, hold up a second." She paused, clutching her binder like a shield. "Are you sure everything's all right?" he asked gently. She nodded, but it wasn't convincing. "You don't have to explain," he added, "but I just want you to know, I believe you." That was the first time someone had said that out loud. Not, "Are you okay?" or "That was messed up," but "I believe you." And it cracked something open inside her. Still, she didn't rush to tell her parents, not until that night when she came home and saw a familiar pair of boots by the front door, mud still clinging to the soles. Her father was home. Colonel Ethan Thompson, retired Delta Force commander, wasn't one to announce his returns. He showed up when it mattered. His presence was always quiet but heavy, like thunder you felt before you heard. He didn't need medals or speeches. His reputation spoke louder than any uniform ever could. Maya hadn't expected him so soon. When she walked in and saw him sitting in the kitchen with her mother, he looked up instantly. "What happened?" he asked. Not if something happened. What? That was all it took. Maya sat down, hands trembling, and told them everything. The hallway, the water, the way Beckett had looked at her, the long weeks of being followed, questioned, made to feel like she was always one wrong move away from being punished. She spoke with a mix of shame, exhaustion, and frustration. Her mother listened, lips pressed tightly together, her eyes wet but angry. Ethan didn't interrupt, he didn't pace, he didn't shout. When she finished, he nodded once, stood up, and walked into his home office without saying another word. The door closed softly behind him. What Maya didn't see was that her father wasn't just absorbing the story. He was preparing. Inside his office were things no one touched: classified case files, encrypted hard drives, a military-grade laptop only he knew how to access. And that night, while the house was silent, Colonel Thompson moved with the same calm precision he once used to disarm war zones. He began pulling data. Beckett's public record, complaint filings from past years, patterns in his patrol reports, disciplinary history. He called in a favor to a former JAG officer and another to an old FBI contact. By 3 a.m., a disturbing picture had emerged. A pattern of targeting students of color, especially those who were confident, articulate, or dared to challenge authority. Ethan didn't need conspiracy theories. The facts were loud enough. They told a story most people didn't bother to piece together. But he did. He always did. And this time, it wasn't for a mission overseas. It was for his daughter. The next morning, just after the first period began, Colonel Ethan Thompson walked into Lakeside High, not as a former soldier, not as a man on a mission, but as a father. He wore no uniform, carried no briefcase, and made no threats. But the way he moved through the front office, measured, silent, unwavering, stilled the room. The front desk assistant glanced up and instinctively stood. He didn't ask for directions. He didn't need to. When he entered the principal's office, Principal Linda Monroe, a woman known for her calm professionalism, immediately felt the shift in atmosphere. She gestured for him to sit, but he remained standing, setting a sealed manila envelope on her desk with a calmness that carried weight. "I'd like to have a conversation about Officer Beckett," he said simply. Then, with the steadiness of someone used to delivering mission briefings in war zones, he laid out the facts, one by one. Inside the folder were copies of public records, timestamps, disciplinary reviews, witness statements, and formal complaints. Some previously dismissed, others quietly archived. But together they revealed a pattern. Abuse of authority, repeated targeting of minority students, surveillance of Maya without cause, and a clear conflict of interest involving his son, Jake Beckett. There were statements from 3 additional students, 1 sophomore and 2 juniors, who had previously been stopped, questioned, or intimidated by Officer Beckett for reasons they couldn't explain. They all described the same feeling. Fear cloaked in silence. Ethan didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. Instead, he asked one simple question, delivered with the chill of absolute certainty. "Do you want to fix this here, in this office, or on the front page of the Colorado Journal?" Principal Monroe said nothing for a long moment, but the message was unmistakable. Her hands moved to the file slowly, her eyes scanning the first few pages. Her posture shifted, the weight of what had just landed on her desk, and the quiet force of the man standing before her left no room for denial. She nodded once. By the end of the day, an internal investigation had been launched by the school district. The district's legal counsel was notified. So was the superintendent. By 4 p.m., a local education reporter from the Pine Valley Post had received an anonymous tip, and by the 6 o'clock news, the story was breaking across the state. High school student allegedly harassed by school resource officer, father demands action. The headline was firm, but the article underneath was damning. It included quotes from the students, a former teacher, and documentation that could no longer be ignored. Channel 7 picked it up by the evening broadcast, flashing blurred images of Maya walking to class, her face protected, but her story becoming public. Colonel Thompson didn't return any calls for interviews. He hadn't come for attention. He had come for accountability. And he got it. The moment the truth touched daylight, silence was no longer an option for anyone. What had once been hallway gossip was now a district-level crisis. For the first time, Officer Beckett was no longer the one holding control. He was the one under scrutiny. And this time, there was no hiding behind a badge. Officer Beckett was placed on administrative leave pending a formal investigation, and the once unshakable air of authority he carried began to unravel fast. Jake, his son, quietly deleted every cryptic post and snide comment he had made about Maya, retreating from the cocky arrogance he once wore like armor. The classmates who had laughed in the hallway now avoided her gaze. Some looked away in guilt, others nodded silently, as if finally seeing her for who she was. The energy at Lakeside High shifted, subtle but real. Maya didn't walk with swagger or seek revenge. She simply returned to her routine, but her steps carried something new, steadiness. When the invitation arrived from the State Student Leadership Council, asking her to speak at their annual summit, she hesitated. But her father's words echoed, "When the truth lands, don't run from it, stand in it." So she said yes. Her speech, titled The Dignity in Silence, wasn't dramatic or tearful. It was measured, reflective, and powerful. She spoke about what it means to feel invisible in spaces meant to protect you, about how dignity isn't loud but unshakable, and how the hardest thing sometimes is choosing not to become the anger aimed at you. The audience gave her a standing ovation. But the most pivotal moment came later, away from any stage or spotlight. As part of the district's new restorative justice initiative, Maya was invited to participate in a mediated conversation with Officer Beckett. She didn't have to go. No one would have blamed her if she declined. But when her father asked gently, "Do you want him to hear about you or hear from you?" she knew her answer. The meeting took place in a small, neutral room at the district office. Folding chairs, blank walls, a clock ticking too loudly. Beckett sat stiffly on one side, no badge, no uniform, just a man suddenly faced with the weight of his actions. The facilitator explained the process, then stepped back. For a long moment, no one spoke. Then Maya began, her voice calm but cutting in its clarity. "You humiliated me in front of everyone," she said. "You didn't just spill water on a student. You made a choice to strip me of dignity you thought I didn't deserve, and you thought I'd stay small because of it." Beckett shifted in his seat but didn't speak. "I don't need your apology," she continued. "I just need you to know. I remember everything, and I'm still standing." She stood then, without waiting for a response, nodded at the facilitator and walked out. Beckett remained seated, eyes cast down, with nothing left to say. Outside, her father was waiting in the car. No folder, no papers, just presence. As Maya climbed in and shut the door, he looked over and asked quietly, "How do you feel?" She didn't smile, but she nodded. "Like I won, without having to fight." He nodded back. That's what real power looks like. And this time, she believed it. 1 week later, Maya submitted an article to the Lakeside High Gazette, the school's student-run newspaper. Its title was simple, but it echoed across campus. "Silence isn't weakness. It's the pause before the truth enters the room." The piece wasn't angry, it wasn't sensational, it was measured, honest, and written with the quiet strength of someone who had lived through something meant to break her, and walked out standing taller. In her article, she recounted the hallway incident without dramatics, described the cold water, the laughter, the stares, and most importantly, what came afterward. The quiet support from those who chose to listen. The awakening of courage she didn't know she had, and the unwavering presence of a father who fought his battles not with noise, but with truth. She didn't name Officer Beckett. She didn't need to. The story wasn't about revenge. It was about resilience. She ended the article with a question. What kind of silence are you choosing? The kind that protects others, or the kind that protects yourself at their expense? It hit hard. It was shared across classrooms, posted on hallway bulletin boards, and read aloud by teachers during homeroom. And as her voice reached others, it became clear Maya had transformed her silence into something powerful. A platform. In a world where power is so often misused, where authority is too easily mistaken for justice, and where loud voices often drown out the truthful ones, it's easy to believe that the only way to matter is to shout. But Maya's journey reminds us otherwise. True justice isn't defined by rank, title, or how forcefully someone speaks. Sometimes it begins quietly, with a teacher who chooses to believe, a father who decides to act, and a young woman who refuses to disappear. Silence doesn't always mean submission. Sometimes it's the gathering of strength before the first step forward. Sometimes it's the quiet inside a storm, the moment before change takes hold. And when that silence is filled with truth, it becomes louder than any voice raised in anger. The lesson is simple, but it matters now more than ever. Power without integrity is just noise, but silence, when rooted in courage, can shake the very ground beneath injustice. We must all remember that not every hero stands in the spotlight. Some walk through crowded hallways with their heads held high, choosing not to retaliate, but to rebuild. Some confront the systems that failed them, not with fury, but with facts. And some write their truth, not to be seen, but so others can finally feel seen themselves. If this story moved you, ask yourself who you would be in that hallway. The bystander, the teacher, The one who laughed, or the one who chose to speak up? Change doesn't always begin with protest signs and headlines. Sometimes it starts with a voice that refuses to vanish, no matter how many times it's told to be quiet. So, if you've ever felt powerless for doing the right thing, know this. You don't need to shout to be heard. You just need to stand. And when you're ready, speak. Because someone is always listening. If Maya's story inspired you, share it, talk about it, and make space for voices that have waited too long to be heard. And don't forget to subscribe to Aries' Story Channel, where real stories of strength, truth, and transformation find the audience they deserve.